Hi, welcome back. It's a slightly rainy and windy day here in Wellington, New Zealand. Perhaps not totally unusual for us. So if you hear a bit of noise in the background, that's what you're hearing. I wanted to focus today on value, and I want to talk about why value is so much more than price and probably so much more important to you, and why it's important that we think about what value we're offering our customers before we talk about and think about exactly what price we should be charging them. Let's start that with an exercise of imagination. Maria or Marcus or both of them comes into your showroom or your website. Here they come in, they're going to be looking for something to buy. Now, as they are making buying decisions, do they stand around for ages carefully rating you out of 10 points or whatever on how competitive your price is, your appearance and style of your product or service, the quality, the convenience of delivery options, product quality, all those kinds of features? Do they benefits? Do they go and rate you on all of these individually as they're standing there in your showroom looking at it? Nah, not very likely. Some might. Some of you will tell me that yes, I have customers like that. But usually people make a quick overall assessment of the value that you offer. And there are many marketing definitions of value, but I want to use a really simple one, my one, and that is that it's a kind of mushy, overall holistic summary of how we feel about a product and service based as much on emotion and past impressions as any rational judgment. You know, if we've been there before, we've used it, we come to ideas about what the level of value based on all sorts of things that we notice and see. So it's a kind of complex assessment that people make, often very fast and very instinctively. But we need to understand what's behind it, at least to some degree. Okay, so that's a first important lesson, I guess, is that price is not the same as value. And it's important you understand that many people who say they buy on price, if you could actually research them in depth and do some of that probing, you'll often find there's much more to it than just that superficial thing they say about, oh, I bought it because it was a good price. More importantly, or perhaps at least as importantly, people mean different things when they talk about price and a good price. Some, it's the sort of obvious, yeah, it's cheaper, but often people think of price as being a range, so anything between $30 and $50, or they mean it was the second cheapest. You know, I didn't want to buy the top one, but you know, I don't want to go too far down, so I buy the second or a mid-range one. Others think of it as a bargain or as a discount or, you know, a certain level. The way we think of what a good price is really differs depending on who we are and what kind of sector we're buying in and all those sort of things. And it's really important that you try and understand when you get that kind of reaction, how they're thinking, how they're using price. What do they mean by price? What does it mean to Maria? So value is really an assessment that people make about your total business, all the touch points, everything you deliver, all the places that your customer touches your business. So it's not just a price versus basic quality sort of thing. It's also about customer service, how friendly you are, what they've heard about you, your reputations and feelings about your brand. So your general imagery also influences their perception of your value. Imagine a really great electrician, really good, highly skilled at their job, who's also charges really low. Sounds great. But if that person is slow or unfriendly or doesn't reply to messages or whatever, people still won't think of them as delivering good value. They'll still be charged poorly. Value is a wraparound assessment of many things that you do. I like this quote, apparently from Benjamin Franklin: "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." I think that's one to embed in your brain if you're trying to have a consistently successful business over time. It's about thinking about the total value that you offer and long-term good quality and good servicing and so on is just as important in price in delivering to people. Okay, so how do you decide what this value is for your Maria or a Marcus or whatever? Well, there's two things you've got to think about. First of all, what are the elements in your category or area that she uses to really decide, and what needs matter and help her distinguish you from the competitors? And we'll talk about what some of the subcomponents of that are in a second. But also, what's her actual process? How does she judge quality? How much effort does she make into thinking about what your value is? How important are emotional reactions and feelings about your imagery and so on versus rational factors? And how quickly does she make her decision? How much effort does she put into judging you? And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second too. Okay, so if you've been doing some of the exercises on differentiation and listening to some of these earlier videos, I hope that you've already been thinking about what constitutes value in your category for Maria and all the elements that perhaps help her decide between different alternatives in your area. And this obviously, that you should try and get a list of these. Try and get them down on paper, as many things that you can think of that are the key elements that the people that you're targeting think of as value in your sector. But I want you to make sure that you've covered off in at least to these three areas, because mostly value in any sector has at least a few items about these three things: quality, service and price. So think about what constitutes quality in your sector, what constitutes good service, what is a good price in your sector, and then go through it and think, well, how much does this matter? How much does she care about the quality issues and differences? Why? What are the emotional reasons for why as well as the rational reasons? Same with service. What components? After sales service, ongoing support, just how friendly the staff are, what bits of service matter most to her? And again, is why. And the same for price. Is it really as big a factor as you might think? Is it affordability or relative price, or one of those other things I talked about? How does she judge and compare price? What standards does she expect in service? So get your list and ask yourself these questions about each of the elements in them. And that's giving you a kind of idea of the things that you need to have to provide value. You can then look at them and think, well, how well am I doing and what do I need to improve most? Okay, so you've got your list of all the things that might be elements of value in your sector and for your business. Look, in the actual real world, how would your Maria physically assess your value? And I like to use an analogy. Think of yourself trying to choose a new book, and you're scanning them all at random, trying to think, I really like a book to read on the aeroplane or whatever. There's the book cover assessment that you do. Yep, it's that part where you just sort of look at all the covers and you think, do I know that author? And you like the picture on it, and you go, oh well, I might give it a go. Actually, that is the hugest part of how people assess your business. Now you go into your business, or you've thought about it a lot, and you get really used to it, and you'll notice bits that other people won't notice, and you get habitually used to other things that you don't notice because they're just always around. But customers and consumers look at your business fundamentally, first of all, for what I call through the corner of the eye. It's what they're seeing out of the corner of the eye are quick impressions and feelings of all your touch points, where they find you, whether it's on the website and different pages, or on Facebook, or physically in your store. Now, you need to try and do that for yourself in your own business, to try and get back to seeing your business out of the corner of your eye. That's the book cover assessment, the impressions, the feelings. It's worthwhile doing that with someone else, again, that acquaintance who's honest or whatever. Get them to go and say, what's the first thing you notice? What do you feel when you do this, when you look at me on Facebook, or you come into the showroom or whatever? See if they're noticing the things that you want them to notice, that you consider good. What feelings are they getting? Then, of course, if you're lucky, customers come back if you've passed the book cover assessment, and they start to use it. And obviously they notice more things. It's kind of like when you read the novel that you've taken out. What's your last page assessment of that novel? What has given you joy or frustrated you? The second thing to do is then go through and look at it in a little bit more detail and think, well, is she, after she used this a time, is she still seeing the value? Is she going to get bored and expect more, your Maria? So think about Maria using it in a bit more depth. Because that's how people do things. They start out, okay, I've got a good impression, I'll give it a go, and then they try it and they get used to the standards of service or whatever and start to expect more or look for different things or see details. So think about it in both ways. To be doing another exercise a little bit like this, but it's because it's so important that you look at these two ways of thinking about your business and what your offer is about. So I guess that's marketing lesson number 5. Customers want value, even in the bad times. Yeah, sure, people trade down, but they still want it. They want to feel that they're buying value. My view is that as a small or medium enterprises, the best tactic to be sustainable long term is to sell services and products that you are proud of at a fair trading price, at a fair value. It's important to avoid misleading people into buying poor quality, for instance, or paying too high a price. It destroys your reputation and loses repeat business. So before I end then, because I know you're still saying, well, what shall I charge? Clearly I can't tell you because you've all got such different kinds of businesses, but the major thing is to be balanced. You need a pricing level that you can sustain, but which also offers the customer good value, what they would consider good value. If you feel they may not be able to differentiate or see the value in your product, you need to raise that up a little bit. So you ask yourself, what would Marcus, what would Maria be willing to pay, and what kind of pricing model would suit them? How do you work out whether they should be buying on subscription or whatever? What would they want? Now, it may be, because this is a big topic, it's very, very hard to balance those two things. A price that you can sustain and remain profitability and which also offers the customer good value. But I'd say to you that after you've done this exercise, if you think you can't see any way of them seeing value in your business and you can't imagine new ways to build value, then you need to think about your business model, about your costs, about what you're doing, because you may want to charge more but aren't providing the value that the customers want. You need to either get different kinds of customers or you need to improve the value that you're offering. So it's a big topic, but it's very important about comparing value to price. The other things, of course, is to understand your costs. That's a basic of doing business in times like these. Don't get trapped by simple cost price plus pricing, that the idea that you just put a little bit of margin on top of your costs and you'll be right. Your prices long term need to cover a whole lot of things like overheads, emergencies, low seasons. You'll get yourself into trouble if you just try and think about your direct costs and add a little bit to them. And you need to be realistic in setting costs about what demand will be, how it will fluctuate and how much. Many small businesses get into trouble because they don't price their things to take into account low demand. And ultimately, you have to think about your opportunity costs, what else you could be doing. If you're doing a product or service that isn't really differentiated and offering the customers enough value, maybe you should be thinking about what else you should do, how you can change that service, or maybe you need to rethink your business model completely. The other thing I'd say is don't just copy your competitors. They may not be that much better about thinking about pricing than you, and they will have different points of value and differentiation than you. So check them. So you need to understand what your direct and indirect competitors are charging, but don't instinctively copy. Think about these other issues and think about how much value you really offer. This is something that's worth consulting experts on if you're finding it hard. Partly your accountant and partly other people that know a bit about marketing in your area. And one of the reasons that you need to come to grips with pricing and price levels is that it affects far more than your sales. If you make a decision on your price level and you decide, well, times are tough, I have to charge low, for instance, you're building up a whole number of other issues. If prices are low, customers worry about quality. If prices are sort of average, they worry that it's not special. If they're high, they start worrying about whether you're truly getting value. So your marketing points have to change along with just changing your price. Similarly with sales issues, if you charge low, you need to sell a lot. And you have to think about whether you've got the capacity, the distribution channels or whatever to sell a lot. If you're going to sell high, you need to really get into micro and niche and other kinds of marketing to make sure you attract the right people. So it changes the way you do your marketing. It changes consumers' quality expectations. It changes your distribution challenges, because if you're charging low, you've got to have low cost distribution. If you're charging high, you need to get into niche outlets. So changing your price isn't just a matter of what you put on the label. It has implications for how you market and needs thinking about. So that's marketing. In terms of price and value, think about the value and it should lead you into thinking about the price. So next, I want to talk about talking. The importance of networking and word of mouth. Why this is one of the cheapest and most useful things you can do to improve your marketing generally, not just your word of mouth marketing. It's a really useful exercise, and it's the thing that you should do before you do any other kinds of improvements in your marketing. So I hope you'll listen in next time. Thanks very much for listening.